implement something to help players find like-minded people or have an easier way for players A few months ago, VRChat finally fulfilled their promise to the people? What are we, religion? Players find like-minded people or have an easier way for pre-established groups to finally host events without needing to add 1,000 separate accounts or switch between separate... A few years ago, VRChat finally fulfilled their promise to the community to implement something to help players find like-minded people, or to have an easier way for pre-established groups to finally host events without needing to add 1,000 separate people or switch between accounts. And since it's been a few months since the update, I thought it best to see how the groups feature has changed the game, for good or bad. Hello there, y'all, it's Nuoance, and today I thought of a funny thing while watching my community play Murder Mystery. Ever since the group feature, things have been so much easier for me to manage and have others manage events for me. If you're new to VRChat, or perhaps you're less likely to join events just because you don't know how to at the time, VRChat is a whole subculture of community-ran events, from intricate world players all the way to after-dark events, made to distract from the long trials of real-world stresses. I've always wanted to host a monthly appreciation to the massive amount of communities within our small game and give each person their own chance to find people like them. However, I've mentioned this before long ago, a small-time creator has a hard chance finding people to give them a chance. There are many communities who had zero interest working with a nobody, and that's still kind of a mental barrier that I'm trying to overcome. Feeling like I'm a hindrance or in the way when I was just hoping to appreciate and give spotlight to different groups really messed with me, as my first attempt was to actually cover role-playing, as it's something I'm not really well versed in and wanted a new perspective. One of the biggest complaints I heard often as a creator is that people end up leaving VRChat because there isn't much for them to do, or so they think. That all aside, unless you plan to shell out real money for promotion in bigger worlds like Drinking Night or Just Be Club, or have a world with your own promotions that does get enough traffic to gain attention, it's hard growing your community. Trust me, I'm struggling with it now to figure out how best to promote my group. Many groups were grown and killed strictly because it was only through word of mouth or on social media like TikTok or Twitter. And when there's only so many days that people are available, it's hard to have a consistent following. Now though, it's much easier to help promote, run, and give information on those who are wanting to be part of your community without having to be pinged 60 plus times a month. However, with the good always comes the odd, as groups did what they do and quickly turned into another place for people to meme on. Communities such as, well, let me just show you a quick peek at what I see when I check out one of my co-hosts' group choices. Many of these groups are made with the sole purpose of being silly or stupid or offensive. A community in its own way, people see these groups, get a laugh, join them, and move on. An easy one to target is Daddy Mark's Fan Club, which already hit the max amount of entries at 10,000 players. While this wasn't the original purpose of groups, it's safe to say that nobody's surprised at this outcome. However, could these memes be overshadowing the point and harming the growth of other communities? And does the group feature itself make a good enough difference to actually warrant its purpose filled? Let's start out with my usual disclaimers. I am in no way the only opinion on this kind of conversation. I make these videos from my perspective, which you can then challenge respectfully if you want to, or learn from. I am not pretending to know more or to know better than anyone who watches this video, but for those who choose to be full-on jerks, are just gonna get mocked for their tiny brain and then blocked. I also can't say if any of these concerns are planned to be changed, added, or updated in the future, so if you come here to tell me an update was already announced and I missed it, well, this is why I'm not the only opinion here, huh? In reality, I've been going through a very emotional move and I'm not really 100% here mentally, so cry about it and move on, I guess. First, let's start with how groups get started. For those who are new, if you'd like to make your own group, all you need is a VRChat account and VRC+. With that in tow, log into VRChat.com, create your group in question, explain the purpose of your group, some photos, customize how you want people to join, all that jazz. Once you get all that taken care of, make your group public, private, decide if you want the invites to be accepted automatically or they have to go through a little bit of vetting, and then your group is ready to be seen for the public or, well, private, ha ha ha. Each group has their own 6-letter name, followed by a few numbers for people to find easily. However, you could also just look up the name of the community in question if you know what it is and join through there, or if you find somebody who's part of the community, you can click on them and click on their groups and join the community from there, and if that's not easy enough, you could also just have somebody invite you to the community so you can join through there. So like, it's very easy to join a group, and the menu itself is also pretty easy to navigate, but I do have some personal gripes with it that I do want to talk about today. Firstly, let's talk about accessibility. As I stated before, it's been noted that a lot of people who leave the game simply do so because they've had really bad luck finding new people to vibe with. That goes without saying that there are those who just didn't like VRChat, but we're not going to really focus on them because, I don't think the group feature is going to help you hate VRChat. Anyways, one of my biggest gripes with the new group system is that while it definitely makes it easier to find communities, you still need to be able to either look up part of their name or their exact name to find them. For example, let's say I'm a huge club lover and I want to try and find some of these clubs that have been trending on Twitter. Looking up just the word club forces me to check out a single group, rather than all the groups with the name club in them. Another good example was I looked up deaf, since VRChat has a thriving community for players who are deaf, and only a singular group showed up. I know from previous research there are quite a few different communities for deaf players, yet once again I had to go back to the original problem of VR communities, and I had to know their name to look it up. Just like Worlds, having group tags would make this more accessible and easier to find different groups that maybe people are hoping to find. If someone wants a community to roleplay in, they should be able to look up roleplay and find all the different groups that roleplay and what they roleplay in. And if you want a community for murder mystery, you should be able to type in murder mystery and find a group without the group needing to be called murder mystery in the name. I think a big frustration I have is many people who are new to VRChat often are also new to VR and don't really know what we have to offer. Years ago, I would have never thought they were a huge Danganronpa themed community, and that's how I met a large chunk of my friends. Back then, we could sit in public worlds and just wait for people to join out of interest or curiosity, but now there are more trolls than ever and everyone's more private and sticks to their quieter events, so new players have an impossible time to play or sign up or even learn about different communities that still host. Groups are an amazing idea, but as of right now, they're only really useful for hosting pre-established events or those who are eye-catching in a comedic or lewd way. And if VRChat made their own tags for people to checkmark, I feel like that would limit even further the capabilities of the virtual world. Using murder mystery again as the example, if VRChat did not consider it an active enough community to add as a tag, it would effectively kill the groups before they even started, and growth would be an uphill battle. Just recently, I sent my dear friend Rakshaw a poster of my community, Converse, to promote in her worlds, because we've been stuck at 800 mark for a while now. I know that communities that host once a week have more people, and honestly, promotion is apparently not my strong suit. I've got no idea how to organically show what we do without sounding advertitious. Join Converse today! If there were a more general-made board for people to look at, with certain tags on what type of groups they are, it'd be much easier for people like us to take interest in what we do. But if the meme groups aren't moderated, then they are always going to be on top for most popular because of, once again, it's a funny icebreaker and people like it. So what could we do? Well, welcome to my second option, an event calendar. Right now in my server, I have 2 photos in my group gallery, a general overview of what we do Thursday through Sunday, and a full calendar for February's events. This is so that if someone joins and maybe doesn't join the Discord, they're still able to see what we do and when we do it, or at least a rough estimate. I think having an option like on Discord that makes pre-made event times for people to get notified of would do great things for the group feature and make it easier to distribute any information that may be needed. I know we have the announcement tab, but you can only have one announcement at a time, and I do know people who make those announcements like every single time they're starting an event, but it's only going to work for the people who are on at that time. I've had days where I planned to not get on VR only to change my mind because I learned of plans that were being made or events being hosted. I personally think having a space for activity would do wonders for the community around us, and would show the actual level of activity in groups in question. This would be a great way for VRChat to know what communities are taking an active part within their game, and for the public ones would be a great way to promote them. Sure, there are the nuances of public groups that are technically against TOS being adult-only spaces. However, most of those groups are requests to join. Or, honestly, a lot of those groups still do the old method of adding the host, so I don't think there's a big issue in itself promoting groups that are auto-join only. Personally, I think VRChat would want to promote these groups that are active and still trying to grow, if only because it keeps people active in their game longer. I may be missing a piece of the puzzle, but to me it feels like a win-win for both sides. If there are concerns about trolls joining and causing havoc, well, in reality, there's not much you can do about that minus to report them, block them, move on. Though now that I've brought up the more adult events, one other thing I thought about was an event cap and the world cap. What if you're in a spot where you don't want the max amount of players possible during an event? Let's use Murder Mystery again, and for those who have never played or heard with the game, check out my Murder Mystery playlist to learn more. When a game is started, no new players are allowed to join, thus having the instance open can cause some problems for the other players. Especially quest users, right now we don't have the real most optimized worlds for them, and it's pretty easy to see people crash. I think having a closed instance option would make things a lot more customizable for hosts to have control over who joins and who's too late. On the flip side of this, I think it has been finally updated, but for a while there, you couldn't join an instance that was full by the default amount. So like 10 players, usually you could go 20, but for the groups, they would stick it at 10. Sure, you could just join off a friend to get into the world still, but the purpose of groups was to negate the need for adding everyone in your community. So having an actual cap for the hard limit as groups is just limiting. And it doesn't help people get into the games to have fun and party hard, which reflects how active a server is through their in-game or during-game photos. This is completely off topic, but also since I brought it up, if you make game worlds, set your world limit to like 20. Why does it always have to be 12? Why can't it be something a little bigger? I have the worst time keeping people in the events because we always get too full and people don't want to join. Damn! I mentioned earlier that my group's gallery has only 2 photos in it, and this brings me to complaint number 3, the need for their own uploading photo option. A few weeks ago, I had sifted through a ton of beautiful photos that my talented photographers took during an event and not only individually posted them to my own album, which only holds up to 64 photos, but also had to resize each one to fit their specific size specifications. It was a really frustrating process, and I stupidly thought that maybe once the photos were in the group's gallery, they'd stay even if I deleted them from my gallery. And they didn't! So it was a waste of time, and I was super sad about it because I spent the last hour trying to get it all nice for our events! I understand that maybe I can't upload all the photos from each event, but having 1 or 2 nice ones to commemorate the fun times would be nice to see. Plus, the whole process of uploading photos have always been unnecessarily complex for VRChat. It's not hard, but it's a lot more steps than I'd expect to upload a photo, and you can only upload 1 at a time. Just let me drop the whole thing. Sure, it's 10 photos, but nah! Continuing on is the group banners, which you could also have to upload your own personal account to showcase. While that itself doesn't really bother me since it's, only 2 photos once again, another add-on I'd like is moderator or host tags for people to help run the community, something that people could, when wearing the badge for said group, easily recognize for emergencies. This should have already been a thing because especially for larger events, it's important to know who you can go to for an issue. Just by myself, I've had interactions where other people's events that I was uncomfortable and put into an awkward situation by another, and I needed someone who was part of the event to know there was a creep wandering around. And in one of those situations, I didn't know a single person who was there and ended up leaving because it was a more hassle than it's worth. I've just never come back. We may have this ability with VRC Plus to customize, but it's a bit tone deaf to assume that everyone's planning to buy it just for some icons and other perks. At least personally, I have told my co-host if there was ever a need for a more official look during an event, I would cover the cost of VRC Plus for a month if they don't already have it. But I would much rather have an ability to allow my hosts and helpers to easily identify the people who they need help or need to go to for help without needing to spend extra money. And listen, I know that was a lot of ranting to get through, but I feel like each segment was important to communities getting better and bigger. The group tabs is making my life as a community host so much easier. However, as I mentioned earlier, it's only as useful as you are popular. For groups who just want to stay within their own friend circle, like my friend's Insane Asylum group, it works out great making sure anyone can join without having any surprise guests. But for communities like mine that want to grow and get bigger, it's another tool for ease, but less useful for actual promotion. To wrap this video up, I want to talk about my own community, Converse, which has been growing steadily over the past year or so. And without getting into the nitty-gritty, I did make a promise this year to put more focus into the server and grow it as a space for people to enjoy, including myself and those close to me. So if you're already part of Converse, you may notice some changes coming up over time, and if you're looking for a community to join, I hope you consider my little corner of the world to meet people. We're a bit slow in terms of Discord communications, especially during the week, but every Thursday to Sunday we have tons of fun variety events planned. I'm hoping by the end of the year we'll have enough people to be able to host even more and give back to the community that gave me so much. Thank you all for listening to this video, and I'd love to hear your own takes and thoughts about what needs to change for groups to be more useful to the community. Make sure to drink your water, eat your broccoli, and have a fantastic day. See y'all in the next video. A quick shout out to all of my REMs out there. Elise and Raksha, thank you so much for your continued support.